How are you doing, Internet? I'm Beanuts, and today I'd like to talk about 4 new Star Wars Expanded Universe books that I have read so far. As you can see, Star Wars is among one of the many fandoms of which I've been part of for a long time. And this includes the old Expanded Universe, some of the games like TIE Fighter and Dark Forces, as well as, of course, the original movies. As a result, it's hard for me not to see the new Expanded Universe through the lens of the old, but I will do my best to evaluate the books within the new EU on their own merit. And as for my opinion of the new EU as a whole, I am going to withhold my opinion of that until we see more through the upcoming movies, the anthologies, and so forth, because the new EU has just gotten started. The old EU, now called Legends, has over 200 books, scores of games, including the computer ones, and so it's pretty unfair to compare them even on the basis of what we see in the stories. They're completely different of a completely different level, at least so far. Yet one has just gotten started, as I said, so it's unfair really to compare them. They're completely different animals, even if one borrows from the other. And of course, it's all owned by Disney anyway, so they're free to borrow what they want. The new novels that I have read, and will now give my impression of, in order that they occurred, are Tarkin, Heir to the Jedi, Aftermath, and this one, which I still have, Bloodline. Apart from Aftermath, they came from Vaughan Public Libraries. Aftermath itself came from Richmond Hill Public Library. So it's always a pleasure having these services available so that I can use them and read the books and judge them based on whether or not I enjoy them before I get them. And then when I get them, it's usually through the library book sales, which is what you saw on my shelf beside me a little while ago. Tarkin by James Luceno chronicles Wilhelm Tarkin's early life, as well as his rise to power and how he met Sheev Palpatine and Darth Vader and his first impressions of them as he chases after some lowercase rebels. It explains why he came to value demonstrable power the most in his life, because there's this rite of passage within the Tarkin family of surviving within the wilds on a mountain on their property. In order to do so, not only do you have to be able to take advantage of the land and get your subsistence from it, but you also have to survive the natives that are there, who are wild but also tribal. In order to do that, Tarkin became the alpha of the tribe. He also learned to kill during that time. It reflects a lot on his attitude in what we see in A New Hope when he's addressing Leia, and then also how he could, in a moment, turn from getting an answer from her to giving the order to destroy Alderaan. All that was pretty well explained, and James Luceno did an excellent job with this novel. Overall, I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it to anyone. Similar to Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster, Heir to the Jedi by Kevin Hearn takes place between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. This stars a young Luke Skywalker just after he had destroyed the first Death Star, starting to seek a way as a new Jedi. And it is interestingly enough written in the first-person perspective, by his perspective. And the one thing that really rubbed me about this novel is that Luke appeared to be too mature and too worldly to me. He had recently been a moisture farmer, and he had just recently gotten off of a major victory, as well as his first time inside an X-Wing cockpit. I think that he would still be riding high on this, and he wouldn't have that mature outlook until much later, after he had studied so much seriously as a Jedi, and perhaps even after he had become a Jedi Knight, or ranked as such, because there weren't many other Jedi to teach him and also to certify him at any of the levels. And throughout, he was seeking some insight as to the Jedi and how they used to do things. And as well, he was interacting with other characters in a way that just seemed a little bit too worldly for such a young character. So while it was an interesting story, I don't think it was believably written. This is one where I believe your mileage will vary. Some people will enjoy it, others will ask questions. Aftermath is the first novel in a trilogy by Chuck Wendig. It's supposed to lead up to The Force Awakens and answer some of the questions as to what happened between Return of the Jedi and TFA. In reading Aftermath, I didn't really get that much of an impression from it. It didn't have that much impact, and the characters were just sort of there. They had one or two individual characteristics, but I don't think they were fully realized. Maybe Wendig intended to more fully realize and develop them in the other novels, Life, Debt, and Empire's End. However, the way things unfolded in Aftermath, I was not motivated to continue with the series. Things just happened, but I kept going, so what? What's the change? And it really didn't answer any of the questions. And my major problem with it was the level of incompetence that the officers of the Imperial Remnant showed. They were completely dysfunctional together because they were from different factions, some of them from the military, or you had the Grand Moff, who was all about ceremony and titles and that kind of thing, and you had the religious nut. They just were completely unable to come together in order to accomplish their goals. The rebels to be, and even Wedge Antilles from the original movie, who got captured 1 or 2 times, 3 times. It doesn't really matter because the Imperials were so incompetent that they got loose again. The big issue with this is that if they were unable to accomplish their goals and if they were unable to see things through, why would they be a threat to the New Republic as it was being born? Really, throughout the novel, a question of, so what? What am I supposed to take from this? That's what's going through my head as I'm reading. Therefore, unless Wendig took things much further, took the story up several notches, improved the characters, developed them, fleshed them out, I cannot recommend the series. Now, if you have read Life, Debt, and Empire's End, and you see that they have improved and they've told a great story, please do let me know in the comments below so that I can get a hold of them and read them as well, because I do enjoy Star Wars to a great deal, as well as a good story in general. Overall, however, I cannot recommend Aftermath at this time. Finally, we come to Bloodline by Claudia Gray, and this was recommended to me as the novel that would answer all the questions that arose out of The Force Awakens. How did things get to be the way they were? Where did the First Order come from? How did they rise? Why was there a resistance at the same time that the New Republic still existed? That kind of thing. Most of this novel focuses on Leia, and this is fine. There are also other characters there supporting her, including sometimes Han Solo, who still has a supporting role and still not wandering just yet, as we found him in TFA. Even though they didn't get to be together that much during this novel, Han and Leia were still married. The author did not have Leia take the Solo name, as she does in the old expanded universe when she's known as Leia Organa Solo. Throughout the novel, Leia is still a senator, even within the New Republic Senate. She is, however, a little bit hot-headed and easy to anger. she has not seemingly received Jedi training, which seems odd since this is 15, 20 years after Jedi, so she's had the opportunity. She could have studied under Luke, as she did in the old EU, and it would have been useful for the New Republic. A lot of Jedi, for example, can sense the truth and lies, which would be extremely useful for someone in politics. It's the fact that she is so easy to anger that bugs me the most, because Leia has been involved in a Senate since she was 14 years old, and that's a fact that was referenced numerous times in this book. So she would have the training to keep her cool and to analyze the situation in other people and get the best of what she could out of them, especially since within the novel she is essentially a member of the Old Guard. She is one of the more experienced members of the Senate and the most worldly. She also remembers the Civil War, Galactic Civil War, the best out of a lot of the other characters. She is therefore one of the wisest characters there available. And the others, apparently, even across the galaxy, don't really remember the Empire and Palpatine all that much, even though within the story all that only happened 20 years ago, and that's more than enough time. They still should have remembered. It's more or less a generation, but still it should be fairly fresh within the galactic memory, especially if you're trying to create a government that will not duplicate what the Galactic Empire was doing, so you don't get another tyrant. It is in the absence of such memory that the First Order are established, and at the same time the foundations of the Resistance are also established, because the New Republic Senate has apparently taken on a stupidity surplus, kind of like in the Thursday Next series. They're not acting all that smart and they can't get anything done, which in turn leads to sentiment that the Senate is useless, cannot get things done, cannot support much of the galaxy, but especially those planets on the Outer Rim. And so there's sentiment against the New Republic because of that. Leia has to work within that to try to make things better, and at the same time she's getting tired of this. She's about ready to leave the Senate at the beginning of the novel, and yet there are things that need to be done. So by the end you have the first inklings of the First Order and the rise of the Resistance. Those two questions are answered. Matters of Luke and Kylo Ren, those are completely unanswered because they're not in the novel at all. I can probably gather that they would be covered in another novel though, and hopefully they will, because there are a lot of questions about that I think should be answered. About Kylo Ren's raid on the Jedi Academy, what would push Luke to turn his back on the galaxy, how Han and Leia reacted to Kylo Ren rising, as well as Snoke. There's no hint of Snoke within this novel, at least that I could see. He might be a Grand Admiral or a leader behind the scenes, but we don't see that. The other issue is that there are characters with whom Leia and her team come into conflict, but they're wrapped up too quickly, too easily. They're there, and then they're not. They're completely gone from the novel. And this is a shame, because he's not really a main antagonist, sort of a sub-level boss, a mini-boss. Rin Riven D, he sounds like he could be an interesting character. He was fleshed out a little bit, not all that much, but he seemed like a cultured fellow. But as soon as he revealed his claws, as soon as he got confrontational, that was it, he was gone, which is a shame. The cultured villain, the one who's smart enough to really push the heroes to their limits, simply through their wits. Those are my favorite kinds of villains and antagonists within a story. And you'll see that with Grand Admiral Thrawn especially, since he is one of my favorite Star Wars villains of all time. And he was all about information. Same way Rin Riven D, big on information and having it as a resource, but he also got pulled around a bit by those who were funding him. It was following the funds, following the information that drove the plot quite a bit. Overall though, Bloodline was okay, it was fairly good. Some of the characterization could have been reworked and made better, but overall it was a pretty good novel, and I did enjoy reading it. I questioned things at the beginning, but I got more into it as I read on, so I can recommend that you read it. The next new Star Wars book that I intend to read is Thrawn by Timothy Zahn, and I'm excited about this because, like I said, Thrawn is my favorite Star Wars antagonist. I know that he has been brought back into the canon in Star Wars Rebels, the television series. And from what I have seen, Disney is doing him a fair turn. They're doing him fairly well. Not only have they decided to have a novel written about him and starring him so that he is brought more into the fold and becomes more part of the Star Wars canon again. It's a novel that explains his origin, and it's by Thrawn's original creator, Timothy Zahn. And Zahn has never, that I'm aware of, written a bad novel, so I'm very much looking forward to it, and I have placed a hold on it. That's going to come sometime in the future, a review on Star Wars Thrawn, to see whether or not it is everything that it's cracked up to be. And that about does it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I was able to inform you and help you to decide whether or not you would like to read any of these books. As I said before, your mileage will vary. Some of them may be to your taste, others may not be. So what I would most recommend is that you give them a chance yourself. Read them. If they are to your taste, you can continue with that. If not, you can put them down. But one excellent way to get your hands on the books without paying a cent is through your local library. So get in, check them out. Well, please like and comment below, subscribe to show your support, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye!